Sweeney, but first, a word from a sponsor. The regular season is in the rearview, and now it's time for the games that matter the most. Because Skinny Beach and playoff basketball is finally here. On Small Ball, we're diving deep into every series, every crunch time finish, every coaching adjustment that can make or break a championship run. Who's building for a 16-win marathon? Which superstar will submit their legacy? And which role player is about to become a household name? With so many fascinating first-round matchups, will the West be the bloodbath we anticipate? Will the East be as predictable as we think? Can the Celtics defend their title? Can Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard push the game teams at the top? I'll be bringing the expertise, the passion, and genuine opinion you need for the most exciting time of the NBA calendar. Small Ball is your essential companion for the NBA postseason. Join me in each episode of Small Ball throughout the playoffs. Don't miss Small Ball in each episode throughout the playoffs. Available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
Last week's ruling from the judge was scathing. She famously referred Apple for a possible criminal investigation. That got a lot of headlines. But it's a court ruling. The Apple will appeal it. It could get reversed again. How do you plot out sort of how you guys proceed? You're very excited about how this is going to go. But again, it could turn around again sometime down the future.
Let's look at how the world has changed here. This is not an ordinary court ruling. If you look at rulings against major corporations where they've lost a matter, they don't look like this. The court found, and it was extraordinarily well documented in evidence, that Apple attempted to shield all their business conversations, which are not privileged, from scrutiny by the court through fake privilege. Just designating documents privileged when they simply were not. And thinking that they were getting away with that, they then had some actual discussions about their real business plans and their motives for how to extract maximum amount of profit and undermine the court's ruling about fabricating documents that were a sort of parallel planning session where they planned what they were going to do and tried to justify it. And different groups of people writing different documents with some overlap. But Apple attempted to mislead the court into concluding that they had complied, based on one set of conversations while shielding the real ones from it. That's utterly a wrong thing to do. I think the court was actually rather generous with Apple in the way they phrased it all. But the court also made a criminal referral of Apple, both the company as a corporation and the vice president of finance to the federal attorney overseeing those matters. It's a very unusual thing, and the most important thing is Apple. You throw out Epic versus Apple in the early days of it. Apple was presumed to be a world-class company operating in good faith, and it all changed now. All the year, because this process Apple was conducting is not just targeting Epic; it was also targeting the European and other international, perhaps domestic regulatory investigations into Apple. They were concealing their actual business conversations about how to maliciously comply with the law while fabricating new documents and using all kinds of false attorney-client privilege designations to hide from it. Suddenly, Apple's been trying to convince U.S. regulators or the U.S. administration to stop Europe from over-regulating it and unfairly targeting American companies. Well, guess what? The fees and the fines that the European Union just imposed on Apple for Digital Markets Act violations, they concern the same anti-steering policies that were found unlawful in the United States, where Apple was just found in contempt of court for their malicious compliance. These are the same things happening. The U.S. Litigation against Apple, the European regulation of Apple is exactly the same. So I think there's no way anybody in the State Department or the Commerce Department can ethically pressure the European Union to stop enforcing the law against Apple.
Let's leave aside Europe and let's leave aside Donald Trump's State Department and Commerce Department. Those are all wild cards. We don't need to get into them here. But just to bring it back here, there is a possibility that the U.S. court system says, leaving aside Apple's image and everything else that Tim Sweeney just said, what we have to decide here is the merits of the case, and they could go the other way, right? They could say Apple does have the right to say, you know what, we don't need to tell you what's in someone else's store. Just like I can't walk into Amazon and learn that Walmart.com has something else. I can't go to Macy's in London. Bloomingdale's has something else at a different price, right? They could come back to some version of
No, they cannot do that. This case was already decided. The injunction was already put in place. It was appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court, which upheld it, and it was appealed to the United States Supreme Court, which
shows
decided not to hear it. But this is absolutely and finally resolved. The court's injunction, as written, is 100% law and precedent. That is irreversible now. And so the only specific things that Apple can appeal are the precise terms of the court's clarification of the injunction and the court's directive to Apple on exactly what they need to change.
So I'm asking if there's a plan B, and you say, no, there is no plan B, where you don't need to worry about it in the U.S. when it comes to this lawsuit. The Ninth Circuit Court will have its say, but there's no question that Apple is obliged to follow the injunction, and it will be very hard, I think, looking at the evidentiary record to conclude anything other than that Apple did maliciously comply, and they must comply. And, there's a standard there of the court having discretion to enforce its injunction, especially in the presence of malicious compliance or contempt of court. I think that's an extraordinary long shot that Apple is going for their appeal. So you feel confident about your chances in this proceeding? You spent 5 years, well over $100 million in court fees, a lot of loss there. If this goes the way you think it's going to go, do you go, all right, my work here is done, I can go back to developing, creating games, and creating tools for developers, or are you going to continue to fight with Apple in other venues?
Well, that's really going to be up to Apple. When Fortnite returns to the App Store under Apple's full compliance with the new rules as clarified by the court, our fight in the United States will be completely over. It's res judicata. There's no further grounds for dispute in that case. And we'll continue to press internationally. We have litigation. We had a long trial in Australia against Epic versus Apple and Google. A decision will be coming in pretty soon now. And then in many other countries around the world, there's legislation which we've been advocating for and will continue to advocate for. But, I wouldn't say that this is going to be over. The price of freedom is everlasting vigilance. We're going to have to constantly be mindful of everything that these companies are trying to do to stifle competition and be willing to resist it if they do